Let's start tonight by getting real. The Real ID deadline is tomorrow, and since the DMV is closed for the day, if you don't have one, you will miss that deadline. But what does that mean exactly? Well, we've been telling you for weeks, years actually, but we're going to get into that in a minute. The White House said no more delays. Tomorrow is the day. You need a Real ID or you can't board a plane. It caused panic and stress. People missing work to wait in long lines at the DMV, some with desperate and heartbreaking stories.
That I am trying to get my Real ID so I can fly to California to be with my parents as my mom dies from cancer. I can get on the plane, but I'm not sure if I can come home.
So that was Kathleen Barden. Maybe Washington was listening to people like her. Or maybe they realized that overnight we'd be barring millions of people from traveling, creating devastating issues for families and businesses and airlines. Who's to know? They didn't really explain. But it does bring us to our quote of the day. They may be diverted to a different line or have an extra step, but people will be allowed to fly. That's what Kristi Noem said today. She heads the Department of Homeland Security, explaining that, on second thought, you don't really need a Real ID to fly after all. So obviously the messaging has relaxed a bit, but travelers have not. We all still have a lot of questions. If you don't need a Real ID, what do you need? Just the license you were using before, something else, something extra? And what about all those extra steps that you may need to take? Well, we sent WRL's Sean Gallagher into the lines of the TSA to find out for us.
It should be the golden ticket to fly, but it's feeling more like fool's gold after the TSA makes the announcement that those without a Real ID should be fined to fly the skies. For the most part, people are prepared. Do you have your Real ID by any chance?
Yes, sir.
Yeah?
I have every ID possible.
And have been for some time.
Hey, a while ago, actually.
A while, like months?
Yes.
Yeah.
2 years.
TSA says 81% of flyers have either Real ID or another federally approved ID.
I'm just going to use my passport. I'm military.
Okay. But there are about 1 in 5 people who drop the ball.
Yeah. 99%.
Yeah. No.
Better get on that.
But TSA spokesperson Dan Velez says those without the proper ID can relax.
You'll be identified as non-compliant. You'll be pulled off to the side and possibly go through additional screening.
Which is a relief for people like Kathleen Barden.
I was here till 5 o'clock yesterday and I did not get seen.
And then today you're just starting over.
And today I'm starting over.
She's one of the dozens I've met who feel they've wasted time waiting in DMV lines across the state. Time she just doesn't have.
My mom has entered palliative care. She's dying from cancer. She's 87 years old. So I really need to take that flight now, today.
With tomorrow marking the start of Real ID, she was unsure if she'd be able to return. But this news from TSA will allow her to find closure.
That's huge. I really appreciate the flexibility, and I need to go say goodbye to my mom.
So when she returns, it shouldn't be a problem. Velez tells me they will have people plucking non-compliant passengers from the TSA lines to be taken elsewhere for more verification screening.
The security screening will be a lot longer than someone who is coming through with just a regular driver's license that is not Real ID compliant.
So you will be able to get through, but give yourself some extra time. Velez wouldn't give us any estimates for how long it could take with these new processes, but it's a real possibility you could miss a flight with those extra screenings. At RDU, Sean Gallagher, WRAL News.
All right, there you have it. Thank you to Sean. Let's summarize. You don't have to have a Real ID. You can still use your North Carolina's driver's license, and you could get plucked out of line, meaning it may take a little longer for you to get through security. That said, you should still get a Real ID, which has proven almost impossible because our DMV is objectively an overwhelmed mess. But a viewer named Wim sent me a pretty good point. He said the perception is to blame the DMV. However, shouldn't most of the blame be on the people that have waited so long? And he's right, And he's not talking about waiting in line. He's talking about the fact you've had almost a decade to get this done. Though, to be fair, it hasn't been that simple. So let's take a look at how we got here. Real ID was one of the many ideas that came from the aftermath of 9/11. the hijackers boarded the planes using driver's licenses and state ID cards. So in 2005, Congress passed the REAL ID Act with the goal to make identification more secure.
Issuing driver's licenses to anyone without knowing whether they're here legally or who they really are is an open invitation for terrorists and criminals to hide in plain sight.
The first deadline was for 2008, but not everyone was on board.
Literally sets up the backbone for a system to track all Americans throughout their lives, their movements, where they're going to, where they're coming from.
Implementing Real ID would cost states tens of millions of dollars, and the Real ID Act didn't provide those funds to the states. So state lawmakers responded by rejecting Real ID. New Hampshire was the first to do it.
I don't believe that the people of New Hampshire elected us to help the federal government create a national identification card.
North Carolina tried in 2008, but the bill failed. A challenge from Maine led to the first delay, pushing the deadline to 2010 and then to 2011. And it was in 2011 that North Carolina again tried to reject Real ID. Once again, that bill failed. President Obama issued the next delay, pushing Real ID back to 2013 and then again to 2014, all because more and more states raised concerns. By 2015, 18 states had laws against Real ID, refusing to bow to an unfunded federal mandate.
If they do spend their taxpayer dollars on compliance, they're committing themselves forevermore to obey federal mandates coming out of Washington.
In 2017, North Carolina fell in line, starting a statewide rollout for the Real ID. But other states kept asking for more extensions, and they got their wish. A new deadline set for October 2020. Needless to say, another delay was put in place.
Coronavirus is now touching all of our lives. It's pervasive in what it means to our daily work lives.
President Trump pushing Real ID to 2021. But COVID-19 wasn't finished with us just yet. So President Biden delayed to 2023 and then again to May 7th, 2025. Now, all 50 states are compliant, offering people a way to get their Real ID. And if they don't, their trip through security could be, well, delayed.
What will happen tomorrow is folks will come through the line and will issue their ID and show it. If it's not compliant, they may be diverted to a different line, have an extra step, but people will be allowed to fly.
And that's how we got here. So, what should you do if you still need a Real ID? Well, go get one. But again, a viewer named Marchetta explains how difficult that can be. She said, my husband and I would like to get a license or Real ID, but when I went to the website, I found that most of the sites within 50 miles of us are not taking appointments. And we logged on there too, to the website today, and we could not find a single available appointment anywhere in the state for the next 3 months. Not even in the Outer Banks if you were looking for an excuse to go to the beach. Sorry. So let's help each other out. Shall we? Do you know something? Can you help me? Do you have any hacks that we can share? What has worked for you when you went to go get your Real ID? When's the best time to log on and look for an appointment? Is there a time of day that's best that they post the new availability, anything like that? Is there something you can do at the DMV to nab a canceled appointment or to book something in the afternoon? We're going to do our best to look into this and ask them and try and get those answers. But if you have some tips, share them. Let us know. Email me, Dan@WRAL.com. Tell me what is on your mind, and we will go in depth.